Okay, thank you. Excited for a great matchup with the 24th ranked Boston College Eagles. Appreciate our fan base for selling out the game, and we're definitely going to need them to make it a special environment and make it a loud environment. It's going to be an awesome game of college football. I think it's the only ranked game on Saturday, or the only game between two ranked opponents. So we're going to need to make sure that we set the crowd and make sure that the crowd's really good. We need all the advantages we can get. This is a really, really good football team. They're battle tested, obviously, with their road win versus Florida State. I think they're very polished as a team. I think Coach O'Brien has done a tremendous job with, obviously, not only the transition from taking over for Coach Athlete, but also the program alignment. You can tell in all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams are aligned in how that they play the game. You can definitely see the imprint of Coach O'Brien on the offensive side of the ball with his development of Thomas Castellanos. SVP compared him to Kyler Murray, and I think that's a very good comparison. We have him, 73% completion percentage. He's got 6 touchdowns and 0 turnovers on the season. He's a dynamic player with his feet, but I think he's a very accurate passer. The play is never over with the ball in his hands, and he does a really good job of playing the play. I think they have a really good offensive line and a dominant line of scrimmage. They've always been a really good offensive line. 2 years or 3 years ago, they had 2 99-yard drives against us, dominating on the run on the ground. And so we definitely have a tremendous amount of respect for the offensive line play that they have. They've got a really good group of wide receivers. They've added a transfer wide receiver that also has SEC experience in the return game with Jaden McGowan. We know him well from his time at Vanderbilt and have a lot of respect for him as a player and know that he has really game-breaking speed. They've gotten several players out of the transfer portal from at the running back position. Obviously, we know who Trayshawn Ward is from our time competing against him at Kansas State. He does a really good job catching the ball out in the backfield. So offensively, they're very good, very dynamic, stay on schedule, create explosive plays. Quarterback can create explosive plays with his feet as well as his arm. I think their offensive coordinator with his scheme design does a really nice job. Again, when you're talking about Coach O'Brien, whether it's been in college football with what he did at Penn State or in the NFL with what he's accomplished, Deshaun Watson's best years were with Coach O'Brien as his head coach, quarterback's coach, and so got a lot of respect for how he does approaches offensive football. Defensively, they're led by a veteran defensive coordinator who's got a lot of time both in the NFL and in various leagues. And Tim Lewis, very good at the line of scrimmage, returned 4 starters on the defensive line, returned their middle linebackers, so they're strong in the middle. Very good at stopping the run, creating surge at the line of scrimmage. Their linebackers play really well downhill. They're a very difficult matchup in the secondary. Nothing's easy back there. Play a lot of variations of coverage. So it's going to be a real challenge for our offense and defense. We're going to have to play better than we've had the past 2 weeks. We're going to have to clean up penalties. Going to have to play fundamentally sound. We're going to have to find ways to create explosives in the pass game. Going to have to be a lot more physical at the line of scrimmage. We're going to have to sustain blocks without holding. So a lot of things that we can improve on that we're going to have to improve on in order to compete in this game. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Eli, I saw a clip earlier this week where you called the loss at BC a couple years ago one of the low points of your career. Why does that one stick with you?
I just think at that moment, that game was hard for a lot of different reasons. I didn't think we played particularly well. There was a lot of noise around that game for comments that were made by me. So learned a hard lesson as a head coach there. And then obviously, to the emotional swings of that game, we came back, tied it up. They scored in overtime. We throw a pick the first play. First time having to deal with the crowd rushing the field and trying to navigate your way off the field. So a lot to it.
Eli, you're in the midst of game prep, are you able to appreciate at all how much of a different spot that this program is at, than it was a couple years ago when it visited Boston College?
No, I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I appreciate try to definitely stay in the moment and understand that it's a special thing to be at Faroe Field in a sold out crowd. And I've actually acknowledged that to a couple of coaches who've been with us the whole time that are on the sideline, whether you're talking about Coach Looper or Coach Smith or Coach Link. I went up to them before the game and said, man, we've come a long way since we first got here. But I mean, at the end of the day, Boston College is a really good football team. They were a really good football team in 2021. And so it'll be a really difficult matchup for us. It'll be a really good football game.
Eli, what has Bill O'Brien done to kind of take away the mistakes that Thomas Castellanos made maybe in previous seasons? What kind of situations have you seen that he's put them into to set them up for success on that side?
I think probably the biggest thing is just maturity at the quarterback position. I think the game slows down for you the more reps you get. Obviously, offensively, they're taking a little bit more advantage of, I think they kind of just put him in a box, so to speak, last year and said, hey, we're gonna create, dynamic run game for you and then play action pass. I think they're treating him as he should be, which is a really good player at the quarterback position, and they don't really define what he has to be. He's growing in a lot of different ways. Last week they went empty quite a bit with him and let him throw the ball vertically down the field based off what the coverage was giving him, and so that's a lot of growth there. And then, there hasn't been a lot of quarterback design runs for him so far. Now, I'm sure they've got them, but so far it's just been taking what the defense gives us, and they're gonna establish a line of scrimmage, which is always the quarterback's best friend when you can be in advantageous third downs. So, I think, again, Coach O'Brien has a philosophy and a system, and I think his offensive coordinator's doing a really good job calling plays for him.
When you with his sort of follow-up group, you touched on his athleticism, but how much harder does that get to contain with the way they use those running backs in like wheel and flat route situations?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. It kind of dictates what you're gonna have to do from a coverage standpoint. I mean, you can try to play man-to-man and spine, but you gotta make sure your spy is good enough to tackle him, or you can play zone, and when you play zone, you're gonna typically be down a man in the box, so then they're able to, define the run game the way they want to. So it's definitely a chess match. I don't think you can go in and say, we're gonna do just this one thing, or we're gonna just do this thing and hope that works. I think you're gonna have to have multiple, options and see which one kind of plays.
When you look at your defense and you think about kind of along the ways this thing has been built with new players, new coordinators, new coaches, what are some of those things along the way that happened that has led to what we've seen the first couple of weeks?
Well, I think it's player driven. I think that's the most important part of it is, the resurgence on the defensive side of the ball has always been player driven. And I think, whether it's, you look at, even 3 years ago when it started to turn, you've got a lot of those same guys here. You had players like Darius Robinson and obviously JC and NSKD, and those guys at the beginning of it continuing to build on that standard, and now those guys are gone, and you still have Christian Williams and Joseph Charleston. You got Johnny Walker, you got Tristan Newsome, you got Chris Norwood, then you got Martin Burks, Trevez, who've all seen what the standard is, and then you add new guys to it who understand I've got to play up to a standard that's not driven by coaches or whatever, it's driven by the men in this room. I'm not gonna let these guys down. In order for me to play, I gotta play at a level that they demand. And I think that's where it starts. Obviously, you've always got good, you gotta combine great standards and players with great schemes. And I think Coach Platoon has done an excellent job figuring out what our defensive players can do well. They play with great effort, but they play within a scheme. And then we've added competitive depth, and so there's not a big variance between, what y'all call starters and backups, we just call first wave and second wave. The first wave of our defense, I think our leading tackler actually, if Champ's not our leading tackler, is in the top 3, and he doesn't even run out there first, but he's a really, really good player. And so we've got waves of players, whether you're talking about defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner. So much fall off.
How is Johnny in particular, how has he grown going into this year? What are the differences?
Well, I mean, I think physically he's continuing to get better. You know, he's a guy that came in at 205 pounds and now he's 255 continuously. Rushes the passer well, continuing, whether it was previous D-line coach or current D-line coach, he's taken different techniques and styles and learned, you know, added more tools in his toolbox from each one of those guys. I think obviously being voted captain, he's taken on a leadership role. I think he's done a really good job with Will and with Jalen, you know, taking those guys under their wings and making sure that they understand developing as a process and becoming the player that you want to be. And then, you know, I remember in the spring, there was a couple of days where we weren't playing very well on defense and he had a players only meeting, you know, just to remind him it wasn't about the coaches, it's about us in this room and about how hard we play and the effort we play with, and that doesn't matter, you know, what the coordinator is. So I think those are some things.
Coach, what has made Johnny and Joe work in that boundary and role this year so far, especially with some of the sacks against Buffalo?
Yeah, in fact, I on our third down prowler package, we actually put Joe and Johnny in there at the same time, and so, you know, I think that's Coach Early and Coach Batoon trying to put our, you know, you have best players, but then you have players who are better at specific things. Yes, Coach Maladon used to always say he's better at other things. You gotta figure out what they're good at and then use them in those strengths. And I think Coach Early and Coach Batoon figured out real quickly that, hey, these two guys have really good pass rush moves and really do a good job containing the quarterback in their pass rush. And so, you know, that allows us to do a lot of different things within the prowler package. So I think that's been an advantageous deal. As far as in the boundary position, those guys have athleticism, flexibility. You know, typically your field end's gonna be a little bit bigger, a little bit more stout. And so that's why Zion and Eddie and Jakai play to that area.
You mentioned explosiveness especially in the passing game, but how pleased have you been just with your efficiency, especially like Buffalo kind of willing to give up the short stuff? I think as they're third in the country in first downs, even if you aren't getting a lot of long plays, you're getting down the field and scoring points.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a sign of growth and maturity from, you know, all of us on the offensive side of the ball. We all want it now. We're instant gratification. We all want explosive plays. You'd rather be on Sports Center for that than, you know, 3 yards in a cloud of dust or 5-yard hitches. But the reality of what we're figuring out is that teams don't really want to give up explosive plays versus our wide receiver core. So we have to be willing to make them defend us in a different manner. And I think our offensive staff, you know, in the first 2 games has done a really good job of figuring out what the defensive plan against us was, and then even having to come up with stuff that maybe wasn't in the game plan that we know, you know, defeats this or defeats that. And I think that's, you know, again, just Coach Moore does an excellent job on the offensive side of the ball with his group and able to communicate with the quarterback, able to calm those guys down. I think, you know, there's a little bit of impatience with the offense at times. You know, it's 3-0 at the end of the first, and you know, we've missed a field goal. We're not really where we want to be, but I think he did a really good job of settling them down in that drive, first drive of the second quarter, getting them in the end zone, and then just calming them down. Like, guys, it's going to be a little bit of a grind. It's going to be a little bit of a grinded out style for us right now. We can't be afraid of it.
Coach, last season y'all played an elite running quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Are there lessons learned from this big day that you'd like to see apply on Saturday in terms of containing Thomas Castellanos, especially with his legs?
Wow, you brought up some bad memories there. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In fact, there was a conversation with me and Joe Moore yesterday in Monday's practice about, you know, a lesson that we learned. There was a 3rd and 7, you know, when we had to lead the 4th quarter, and we talk all week about level rushing quarterback. You can't rush past the quarterback, especially with a guy who can take off. And so, you know, there's a lot of different things that occurred in that game. You know, there's a lot of new players here, but some of the guys who played last year can obviously understand some of the mistakes that we made. Obviously, the game plans are totally different. It's a different style of offense on both sides Boston College huddles, which they did show no huddle last week, but Boston College typically huddles and plays a little bit more out of a 12 personnel, and we'll play 11 and 10, but they're personnel based on off the field. I mean, LSU played 11 as fast as you can go. So there are some differences there. The things that we've tried to do is, obviously Champ Flag and Eddie played against the quarterback last year, and so tried to take, okay, what did y'all think about them? What were some things that he did from a player standpoint that you can let the rest of us know, so we can get a little bit of an early scouting report. And both were consistent in saying that he's as fast as any quarterback they've ever played against. He does a really good job of extending plays, and if you don't have a specific plan for containing him, then it's gonna be a long day.
Coach, what were your first thoughts when you seen Tristan Newsom play, and how has he grown since then to be, a key contributor on the defense?
Well, our first thoughts when we saw him play in junior college and recruiting, typically, we weren't necessarily recruiting junior college players as much because the portal opened. But he was a dynamic player at the linebacker position. I know Coach Smith got a live eval on him. He came in the spring and flashed, and thought he did some really, really good stuff in the spring. But he was playing behind a really good player in Tyron Hopper, and didn't really always want to take him off the field. So I thought he did an excellent job of just trusting the process, not getting frustrated with his role, embracing his role, improve every day. And when the opportunity came after Hop got dinged, and he took full advantage of it. And I think he's still taking advantage of it now. The difference is that he doesn't have to feel the necessary need to play. Hop was playing the 65 plays, Hop would play 50, 54, 55. I think Tristan can play, a nice 25 plays on defense and then add another 12 on special teams. I think one of the most impressive things about Champ so far is that he starts on 3 teams or 2 teams for sure, and rotates in on a third. So his ability to play defense at a high level, but also be able to help us on special teams, those have not necessarily shown up in the bigger stats yet, but they will over the course of these games as we play.
I know it's still early in the week, and it's only been a couple days since Saturday, but how are Luther and Theo feeling?
Yeah, both feeling good. I'm gonna try to just stick with I guess it's not really fair to y'all because y'all don't get the SEC. The SEC only reports if it's SEC to SEC games, right? So, Luther's, I would say probable, Theo's probable. I'm not concerned about either one of those right now. Brett Norfleet would be questionable. He'll practice today. We'll see kind of where he's at. Cam Johnson's questionable. We'll see, he should go out there in a green jersey today, kind of see where he's at. Unless y'all have some inside information, I'm not gonna answer any more questions.
Hey, Eli, I think your 2 starting corners are the only players that's been over about 30, 35 snaps in games. Where do you, is that, how do you feel about the depth there? Do you have guys that you're comfortable, like at some of the other positions where you don't think there's much of a drop off, or is the separation bigger there?
No, no, there's not. We feel very good about really our top 4. Jamarian Wayne's really been dinged up with this hamstring. He practiced yesterday. He looks to be, I hope that he really can go this week. I don't know where to define that. It's probably still questionable, but, that's a guy who hasn't been able to play and help us at the corner position. We have total confidence in Nick DeLoach. I think those numbers get overinflated because the Prowler package, we sub in 6 DB or 6 body types, but we sub in a corner, and we have to keep the 2 starting corners in. We have total confidence in Nick DeLoach, so much confidence. I think he starts on 3 special teams also. So I think that's where the reps are, but there's no reason that we know Chris can play, we know Marcus Carter can play, we know Nick DeLoach can play, we know Toriano can play. We really need to get Jamarian Wayne going, so we have that fit. And I tell you what, man, we really, really like Cam Keys and Jaren Sensabaugh. Those guys have done a really nice job in fall camp, and really have carved out. If they were closer in the depth chart, they would have carved out a spot for them on the special teams, but we just don't want to use them in special teams if we're not going to be able to commit to them enough reps on team. You know, it's one of those fine lines where you don't wanna use a player's season if they're not gonna get, you know, 350 reps on the year.
Coach, any lingering concerns of the field goal operation after a couple of misses?
No, I don't get too concerned on 52 yards and 49-yard misses. You know, those aren't layups. I was more concerned with our offense's inability to get them closer. In our offense's, you know, missed execution right there on the 2-minute drive. I mean, we were in a much easier field goal range and don't execute that last play, throw it 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Tailback decides he's gonna go NCAA 25 on us and push like 3 of his own buttons, like spin, juke, spin, move left. So I was way more worried about that than our field goal kicker. I've got all the confidence in the world in him. You know, it was a little bit windier going to the north, so that 52-yarder into the wind was gonna be a tough task. As long as he saw it inside the 25 and in, I'm good.
Coach, we talked about limiting penalties. What did you see on film that's, you know, brought about some of these penalties?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, the alignment penalties are just embarrassing. As the head football coach, that's on me. That's undisciplined football, and for me to allow that, you know, to happen. You know, we had an alignment penalty in the first game, and to have it again in the second game, that's on me. So, that's gotta get corrected, get taken off the tape. We took a 5-minute period yesterday, with just, alignment to make sure we don't have too many guys on the ball, or not enough guys on the ball, so, you know, that's gotta get corrected. The holding penalties, you know, we gotta learn to, let go. When the ball's out leveraged, just when a defender is broken away, we cannot continue to, engage with the jersey of the defender. And so, there were 3 of those that were clear calls, easy calls that are, you know, something that we have to correct. And, you know, you appreciate guys playing with effort and energy, but they gotta know when it's crossing the line to a penalty. The other ones will be all right. Figure that out.
Anything else for Coach? Thank you, Coach.